Hello. This video starts by introducing some basic techniques for rendering darker tones with watercolour pencils. Then I go on to introduce you to the idea of making some exciting dark tones. I'm just going to draw a few very simple little green trees. But I want to make it look as if this side is darker. Well, one obvious way is just to lay down more paint, more pigment on this side. And then another solution, which most people think is obvious, is to use black. And so I'm laying some black in here to show you how that looks. And then there's another way, but this involves adding some blue to the shadow. Here's the just green version. And that works quite well, especially if you're not being too detailed. Here's the green and black version. Now, on first sight, this doesn't look too bad. And again, it's an option. I personally don't like this method because I think it will make all of your darks look too similar and too dirty. Another option, and that involves adding blue, perhaps not the best blue, to make the colour deeper. In all of these, I'm deliberately leaving some white space on the paper because it adds some spark and lightness. Another option, which is good especially when outdoors, is using a pen like this. So the pen marks both convey the texture of the little tree and also they convey the sense of shadow on the left-hand side. Anyway, if you're relying on that to capture the dark and the light, then again you scribble your darker colour in where you want the darker colour to be. Perhaps a few scribbles this side. Again, remember I'm using the pencil on its side as I showed you in previous videos. And again, here we are. I'm pulling the colour into the centre of the form and just loosening it off there. So there you are, some basic methods for making one side of a tree look darker than the other. Once the paint's dry, you might add some more texture marks, as I'm showing here, partially for texture and partially just to make the darks a little bit darker. I wouldn't necessarily wash those colours out by adding any more water. I might well just leave it like that. Now let's get you started on mixing some exciting dark tones with your pencils. You remember I said that black isn't the best way of making other colours look darker. Just experiment, use your colours and see what you can find works. Here's for a starter, a lovely yellowy green mixed with indigo. And this is the blue I should have used for the earlier part of the demo because it's a bit dusty. It's not so bright as the blue I happened to pick up. And then again, here's a light green. Now I've mixed this one with a brown ochre because if you added black to that, it's far too far away from the green, and yet you want to make it look a bit darker. Here we are, a bit of brown ochre or some sort of similar colour. Gives you a darker tone. Slightly different colour, yes, but that makes it interesting. Moving down the page, this bright green here is a colour that in your set or in your watercolour palette indeed looks like an absolutely revolting colour, and you might wonder why anybody buys it. But it's really useful for mixing. It's also very strong and transparent. This particular one's called phthalo green, but there are all sorts of variations. So here's sepia, which compared to the burnt umber is a much cooler, greyer brown. And this makes a lovely dark green tone here, quite a cool shadow. Here we are again with my favourite indigo, the slightly dusty dark blue, but not bright. And that mixes also with the same rather vulgar green to make a good shadow tone. And then perhaps a little bit more surprisingly, we have this red, and it's a slightly pinky red. Works best with this. And here's the possibly horrible green. But together they make a really mysterious, lovely, violety tone. Enjoy experimenting. The best darks come from colours which are opposite each other on the colour wheel. Topics to come, highlights, and, best of all, textures.